The first group of hostages held by Hamas in the Gaza Strip have now been freed. The International Red Cross confirmed Hamas released 24 hostages. Among them are Israelis who have been freed in exchange for Israel releasing Palestinian prisoners. This swap is part of a deal brokered by Qatar. Also among the freed captives are a group of Thai nationals, but their release is separate from the deal between Israel and Hamas. And for the very latest, let's cross to our correspondent Tanya Kremer, who's following this story for us from the Hatzerim Air Base. That base in southern Israel is where hostages are being received after they're released from captivity. Now, Tanya, the Israeli army says the hostages are in Israel. What's the situation where you are? Are they there?
Well, the Israeli military said that they received the hostages, that they were undergoing a first medical check and that they were on their way. Depending on their condition, some of them might be taken directly to hospitals, but it was the plan at least to bring them here to the Hatzerim Air Base, where a whole team, a medical team, psychologists as well, is planning to receive them, where they go further medical checks. They've been now held captive for over 7 weeks during a war as well. Many of them, they might not know the full extent of what happened on October 7. Also, what happened to their relatives. Others might have seen one of their relatives killed during the terror attacks on October 7. Now, also this evening now, the names and also some first pictures have been released now of those hostages in the bus. We know it's children, it's elderly women and the mothers of the children. The names have been released now. And I think there's a sigh of relief among many here in Israel that they're now in Israel. People know now who they are. And we also heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying, that he's basically saying we've completed now the first stage of this of those hostages coming back home. And he also said that the country is in a state of mixed emotions, from joy, pain, sadness and determination, because there are so many others that need to be brought back. And of course we know that a part of this agreement is that in the next days we will see similar scenarios as we've seen today, if all goes well. Of course, everything is very fragile. It's a volatile situation. Everything could change, but that in the coming 4 days at least, more of the hostages should be released, up to 50 hostages. That's part of the agreement, potentially more in exchange for the Palestinian prisoners that are exchanged, and also more humanitarian aid coming into the Gaza Strip.
Now, in exchange, Palestinian prisoners were reportedly also released. What do you know about that?
Yeah, we just got confirmation that those 39 Palestinian prisoners were released now. This is coming after the release of the first Israeli hostages and also the international hostages that were released. So they have been released to the occupied West Bank and also to East Jerusalem. Some of them were, also from East Jerusalem. So families and relatives had been waiting for them as well. And so these were 39 of those of about 150 that are expected to be released also in the coming days, which this is also part of this agreement that had been brokered by Qatar with the help of Egypt, the US, between Hamas and Israel.
Now we're seeing live pictures here from the West Bank, where people have gathered to greet the Palestinian prisoners that have been released by Israel. Thai nationals, Tanya, were also released today. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this has been a deal that had been brokered aside from this other agreement. And we understand that from Qatar confirmed that 10 Thai citizens were released and one citizen from the Philippines. Now, they were also taken captive during the terror attacks on October 7. Many of the Thai citizens are working in Israel. They work in agriculture. Some work in elderly care, and they were also in these kibbutz, in the kibbutzim or in the localities in the south when this terror attack happened. And some of them were also killed. Some were taken captive, and some remain as well in Gaza, as well as many of the other hostages, the over 230 hostages that are still in Gaza being held and that are still also need to be brought back home.
Now, Tanya, how is the truce holding up?
Well, so far, as I said, it's a very volatile situation. It's a very fragile truce, but so far it has been holding up. There have been no violations. Of course, this can change at any minute, but for the moment it seems that both sides are committed to keep this truce moving and, to go ahead with the agreement as it was set.
Tanya Kremer there, reporting from the Hatzarim Air Base. Thank you. As we've heard, in the occupied West Bank, a group of 39 Palestinian inmates are being freed as part of that temporary truce. Large crowds gathered near the Israeli Offa prison to greet them. Those released include only women and minors. The Red Cross representatives were at the scene to collect the group. Israeli forces fired tear gas at the crowd in an attempt to push them back from the prison. And with me in the studio is now DW's Melinda Crane. Melinda, can we conclude at this stage that this release of the hostages and this truce is a success?
So far, so good. It's still early days, as Tanya mentioned. This is a complex agreement with a lot of different moving parts, but day one appears to have gone according to plan. There was some exchange of fire, or at least one-way fire, shortly after 7 when the ceasefire began this morning. But in fact, after that, things did calm down. Ceasefire appears to be holding. Aid appears to be entering the Gaza Strip, badly, badly needed aid. As you know, it used to be that hundreds of trucks would enter every day. In the last 6 weeks, that hasn't been the case. But today, if all did go as planned, there should have been some up to 200 trucks, including food and cooking, fuel and cooking oil, both badly needed. Both have been in short supply because authorities were concerned, the Israeli authorities concerned that fuel could fall into the hands of Hamas. And then, of course, the prisoner exchange and hostage exchange going according to plan. So 3 more days to go, but so far, so good.
Now, let's talk about Benjamin Netanyahu. His popularity ratings are at rock bottom. Israelis are very angry with him. Can the deal and the release of the hostages today, can that sort of help his career, help keep him afloat?
Possibly it will stabilize some of his support. I don't think it will bring back a lot of those who are angry at him. There are a number of Israelis who believe that it was because of his political focus, namely on getting agreements with neighboring Arab countries, but essentially sidelining the whole Palestinian issue, that it's because of that the situation in Gaza became so untenable and resulted in the attacks of October 7th. So those who take that viewpoint, I think, won't be convinced by the fact that finally some hostages have been released. In fact, Netanyahu dragged his feet for quite a while on the release, and he is certainly dragging his feet on any form or idea of a political two-state solution, of allowing the Palestinian Authority, for example, to take over in Gaza. essentially no word so far on what's going to happen when the military operation ends. So those who are critical of him, I think it won't win them back. It may stabilize some support for some time among others, but many, many observers believe that his days are numbered and that when the military operation comes to an end, his reign may also come to an end.
Now, there's a large international dimension to this whole conflict. Today, the Prime Minister of Belgium and Spain held a press conference at Egypt's Rafah crossing. What do you make of this?
Very problematic, the timing, the location. They were on a 2-day trip. They apparently, on the first day, spoke directly to members of the Israeli government, and then they culminated their trip here on this day at the Rafah crossing, which is a surprising choice of location. And the words used by the Spanish Prime Minister were quite incendiary, certainly from Israel's point of view. He said Israel has not complied with international law, that it needs to do so, that there needs to be a humanitarian ceasefire without time limit, and essentially said that if the world community doesn't go ahead recognizing Palestine as a state, that Spain, or that if the EU does not do so, that Spain would go ahead on its own. So quite strong words from him, and not surprising that the Israeli government has now asked the Spanish ambassador to pay a visit.
They were summoned.
Yeah,
so that's
exactly.
Pretty strong diplomatically speaking.
Indeed.
Is it not? Yes. So what happens on day 5? I mean, this truce is supposed to last 4 days. What happens on day 5?
And your mention of international concern and pressure is very pertinent to that, because there will be a lot of pressure on day 5 to extend the ceasefire. And Hamas may well play the card that is open to it under the agreement to release 10 more hostages and buy 1 more day, and then 10 more and buy another day. It would like to keep these pawns for a while, these hostages, but it may try to walk a tightrope there in order to gain leverage, regroup, reposition hostages even possibly over the term of the ceasefire. And that will only see pressure increase internationally. And certainly it's not only Benjamin Netanyahu who's under pressure. Joe Biden is under pressure, also at home. A very large share of Democrats don't like his profound solidarity with Israel. Many young voters in America, 70%, are not happy with Biden's foreign policy. And he himself faces a dilemma because he doesn't want to see this escalate. With every day that the military operation continues, the chance of escalation with Iran, with Lebanon, with Syria and others increases. So at the same time, Joe Biden would like to tamp that down, and he has nonetheless said Hamas cannot rule in Gaza any longer. He has a dilemma on his hands also on day 5.
Melinda Crane, thank you very much for this analysis. We're going to speak to Moti Crystal. He was a crisis negotiator for various Israeli governments between 1994 and 2001. Today, he is the CEO of Nest. That's a consulting company that provides negotiations and crisis management training. Welcome to DW News. Moti, I assume you follow developments as closely as we are here in the studio. From what we've seen so far, is everything going according to plan in your book?
Yes, the first dispatch is going according to the plan. As we speak, the 13 Israeli hostages and 12 Thais hostages crossed the or are in the cross the Rafah crossing point are in Israel, are in Egypt, and they are going to be transferred to Israel very shortly.
Now, as someone who has been involved in hostage release negotiations, how big is the risk that something goes wrong somewhere in between?
Well, the risk is very high. The risk is very high because so many components, so many elements are involved. It's Hamas leadership, it's Hamas terrorists on the ground, the Red Cross, the Egyptians, all the elements needs to be closely coordinated, and we have to bear in mind that we're dealing with brutal terror organization here, which not necessarily control all its people. So the risks that the deal will for some reason there will be some elements which will not comply with the agreement. The risk is very high. Given that the first dispatch, the first group of people was now already in Israel, it's a good sign. I do hope that the next two rounds of the deal, the two next phases, will be implemented as such. It's important to stress that it is in the interest of Hamas to release these 50 people because they gain more and more days of calm, days of ceasefire, and it allows them to reorganize and strengthen their line of defense, hoping that this ceasefire will be lead to international pressure on Israel to actually end the operation there. That's the game plan of Hamas. Therefore, they do have an interest to maintain the a quiet execution of the release of the hostages.
Now, this first agreement, the release of 50 hostages in exchange for 150 Palestinian prisoners, is successfully implemented in the next few days. Do you expect the more hostages to be released more quickly in the future?
Well, the deal itself, this what we call humanitarian deal, kids, babies, mothers, elderly women, Holocaust survivors, this deal has some incentive mechanism. If Hamas will be able to add additional kids, babies, women to the deal, Hamas will gain extra days of ceasefire. Therefore, it is in the interest of Hamas to continue and to get possession of those hostages which are not in their immediate control. Because on this barbaric terror event of October 7th, also Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, as well as other gangs, warlords, took hostages brutally, and it's a challenge for Hamas now to get them and exchange them in the current deal.
Now, let's talk about the Palestinian prisoners that Israel agreed to release in exchange for the hostages. Who decides which prisoners are put on that list and according to what criteria?
Well, the agreement articulates general criteria, which is mainly female terrorists and young people, not minor, who committed what we call light terror, were convicted for lighter offenses. Lighter could be, by the way, a stabbing attempt of Jews, of innocent Israelis, which didn't materialize to death. That is what we considered light terror offenses. The criteria were agreed, and the names are in the decision, the sole decision of Israel at this part of the deal.
So we are just now seeing live pictures there. I don't know whether you can actually see them. There's a number of ambulance vans lined up there.
Red Cross ambulances which crossed. Of course, the Egyptians who are in charge of the execution of the deal. They have a significant role in implementation. Of course, they make a tremendous show. I'm not sure to what extent it is in the benefit of the hostages. Definitely the kids, the young people who were held for 48 days in Hamas tunnels. But you can see in the picture that the elderly women are actually waving. You know, I'm speaking to you honestly, try to be very, I would say, professional and calm, but see these Holocaust survivors going through what they went and still waving happily This is the strength. This is the Israeli spirit. This is the Israeli resilience. This is the national call which actually supported the Israeli government to negotiate with this terror regime, because it's the moral obligation to free hostages almost at any cost, at any price.
The crisis negotiator Monty Crystal there. Thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.